Hello everyone, today on Lives Unscripted we're going to talk about 14 things you should consider before buying a van for your van conversion. Stay tuned. When we were first looking for a van to do a van conversion with, we knew we wanted to build everything ourselves, but we still had a lot of things to consider before purchasing our van, and so we're going to walk you through some of the things that we thought about before buying our van and hopefully give you some tips so you don't make the same mistakes or a few mistakes that we did. And so let's get started with our first tip. Our first tip is knowing your budget. And this might seem obvious, but with us, we knew that we didn't want to spend over a set amount of dollars for our van just because we knew that we're going to put several $1,000s into converting it. So you got to really take a look at your budget and what you can afford and what you can't, because this is going to determine how expensive of a van you can buy, how new, how many miles. All that stuff is really contingent on your budget. So you're going to want to sit down and allocate money for purchasing a van and money for the conversion of the van. So once you have your budget narrowed down, you'll be able to get a better understanding of what type of vehicles are in and outside of your budget and know which one you can afford, and will help you start figuring out what to look for. Step number 2, you're going to need to figure out how expensive it is to fix and maintain your vehicle. So depending on what type of van you buy, certain ones are going to cost you more money to fix, and when you're traveling around the country and you're in some random town like we were in like Louisiana and the van breaks, like you want to be able to get parts. And if you have a foreign vehicle that's harder to get parts, it's gonna delay you for several days, maybe even weeks. Also, you're gonna have a harder time finding mechanics to fix those, and overall, it's gonna just cost you more money if you get a van that is expensive to fix. For us, we went with the GMC or Chevy van because a lot of the parts for the GMC van is built off their Silverado pickup truck, which is one of the most popular pickup trucks in the United States. So the parts are basically the same as the Silverado pickup, and they're easy to find when in pretty much any location or any town you're in the United States. And so that was one of the considerations we thought of, and also it's just easier to find a mechanic as well. Yeah, just make sure you consider the overall cost. You don't want to put all your money into buying a nice fancy van and then have it break and then not have money to fix it. The third thing to consider when looking at vans is the height, width, and length of the vehicle itself and the interior dimensions. So you're going to want to look at all the vehicles and try to figure out what you're comfortable with. I mean, we wanted to get an extended van with a high top, and we couldn't find extended vans with high tops, so we just ended up going with an extended van, and then we built our van out around the fact that we weren't going to be able to stand up. But if standing up in the van is something that's important to you, you're going to want to look for a high top van. Another thing to consider is if you're a taller person, you're probably going to want a high top. We're both short, like I'm only 5'8", probably somewhere around there, and so for us, bending over a little isn't that big of a deal. We also put foam on our ceiling. That's a good tip. So when you do hit your head, it doesn't really hurt. But if you're taller than that, you're probably going to want something you're going to be able to stand up in a little bit more straight. Or if you know you want to do certain things on the road like surf or snowboard or bike or whatever have you, you need to figure out a way to accommodate those items you're going to bring with you. It's going to play into your decision on what type of van to get, how long, how high, how wide, and it'll just be something you have to consider. Tip number 4, you're going to have to decide whether or not you want a diesel or gasoline powered vehicle. There's pros and cons to each. I initially wanted a diesel, but I mean, it's hard to find. They were hard to find in our price range. So some of the pros for diesel is that it usually gets a little better gas mileage. The engines can usually run for considerably more miles. So if you're buying an older diesel engine, it might last you a little longer. Some pros with the gasoline engine is that it's cheaper to buy the gas, your oil changes are cheaper, the maintenance costs are cheaper. So yeah, you're gonna have to figure out what's important to you, if it's a high priority or not, but you're gonna have to try to figure out whether or not you want a gas or a diesel vehicle. Number 5 is the weight capacity. So they make vans in half-ton, three-quarter-ton, and full-ton, and they probably make ones that are bigger than that as well. But we've noticed some people get a half-ton van, and then they have all their stuff in there, and then the whole rear end of the vehicle is sagging down. And that's a pretty big safety issue. So you're going to want at least, probably at least a three-quarter-ton vehicle. That's what we ended up getting. If you're going to have a lot more weight or you're going to tow stuff, you might want a 1-ton van. So you're going to want to take that in consideration. And then also if you're driving up hills and all kinds of stuff, it's just your weight capacity matters because you're putting a lot of weight in here. You have water, I don't know if you have solar batteries, all your gear, all this stuff adds up in weight. And so you're going to want to get a van that is capable of carrying all that extra weight. And so I would highly encourage you to get at least a three-quarter-ton van, so you're not driving around with the rear end of your van barely almost touching your rear wheels. And that is another thing that might narrow down your van search a little further. Number 6, you're going to want to figure out if you want rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, and the majority of the vans are probably rear-wheel drive, so you're not going to have a whole lot of options. But if you do want to go off-roading or you're going to be driving in mud, you might want to try to find a van that has four-wheel or all-wheel drive. They are harder to find, and if a lot of the four-wheel drives in particular, they're going to be all aftermarket, so it's going to cost you extra money. We ended up going with rear-wheel drive just because we had to pick and choose what was important to us. We have been able to drive in the desert and in some rough off-road conditions that are actually on-road. But yeah, it's just a consideration for all you people that want to go off-roading in the desert, something to consider. So those are 6 tips that we have for before you start looking for vans, just things to think about and consider so that you can kind of narrow down your search and kind of pin down what type of vehicle you're going to want. In this next section, we're going to go on and talk about what kind of things to look for when you're actually purchasing the van. Now I'm going to go into some tips on what to actually look for when you're buying the vehicle. The previous ones are more focused on what to look for when you're researching what type you want to buy. But now we're going to talk about things you should look for when buying. So the first thing, and the thing that really bothers me with our van, kind of maybe made a little mistake, maybe not, is rust. So we live in the Midwest, and we bought our van in the Midwest. And so naturally, because of our price point, we knew we were going to be getting something that was probably a little rusty. But we ended up buying a van that was a little rustier than I would have preferred. So a little cosmetic rust is not a big deal, but our whole under part of our van was pretty substantially rusty. And it wasn't a big deal at first because we only planned on traveling for a year or two. But then now after we got it all built out, it's like we would prefer if we could have the van longer, just because it's nice to travel on weekends or whatever in the future. We're still full-time traveling right now, so that's one thing to consider is check the rust, especially if you're in the Midwest. The other thing about our rusty van is that replacing parts is somewhat of an issue. I know when we first got it, I replaced the starter on it, and when I was taking the old starter off, it basically cracked in half. And then some places when we went to get work done, they were a little hesitant on working on our vehicle because of the amount of rust, because they're not used to it. In the Midwest, mechanics are used to it. They see it all the time. But when we were down south or on the coast, and it was kind of, people were really apprehensive to actually work on our vehicle. So that's one thing to consider. The second thing to do when buying a van is you're going to want to look up the value online. There's some different services like Kelley Blue Book. There's some other ones that you can actually look up what the fair price for the particular vehicle you're looking at is. And that'll give you a better assessment of your budget and what you can afford. So yeah, look up the price, try to figure out what's the average price of the vehicle you're looking at, and that'll help you make sure you don't spend too much money on a van. Step number 3 in buying a van is you're going to want to see how many miles are on the vehicle. So depending on how long you intend to travel, how long you want to keep the vehicle for, how much you want to spend, the miles is going to vary. So for us, we wanted to have a van that was at or below 150,000 miles. And we ended up finding this one for like, I think it has 152, so it's pretty close. But yeah, you're gonna want to figure out what mileage you're comfortable with, and obviously the higher the miles, the more repairs you're gonna have to do. So that's something we just kind of expected, that we're gonna have to fix some stuff, and we were fine with that. But if you don't want to fix a lot of stuff, You might want to get one with less miles, but you still might end up having to fix a lot of things. So figure out what miles you're comfortable with, how long you want to keep the vehicle for, and how much you intend to drive it. I think we put on, driving around the country so far, I think we put on close to 30,000 miles or so since we had the vehicle. We still got several states left, so it's probably going to be a little higher than that. So consider the mileage, figure out what you're going to use the van for, how long you want to keep it, and make a decision based on that. Tip number 4 in purchasing your van is ask some other people for advice. There's lots of good groups online or websites or forums online where you can ask people who've owned different types of vehicles, and it'll give you kind of a good idea of if that type of vehicle is something you want. Also, if you find the vehicle that you think you're going to buy, you can bring a mechanic with you or a friend that knows a lot about cars or trucks or vans, and have them come along with you and see if the vehicle looks like what they would expect, if there's any issues they can find that you might not notice. So yeah, just ask some advice from other people, get recommendations before purchasing the van. Number 5 in purchasing the van is get a Carfax report. So when we bought our van, we ended up getting a Carfax report. I think it does cost a little bit of money. I can't remember, 25 bucks or something. But if you're actually looking at that vehicle, you put the VIN number in, and then it gives you the repair history that's been reported. Some might not have a lot, some will. We noticed some things about our van. Yeah, it's a good way to kind of look up the history of the vehicle. The stuff that's on there though is only reported by mechanics who actually report the work. So it may have a lot of stuff and it may have none. It's just kind of a gamble, but I think it's a good thing to do just so you know kind of what you're getting into. Number 6 is try to inquire about what the vehicle is used for, or maybe by looking at the vehicle you can kind of tell. I mean, this doesn't really apply to passenger vans or minivans or stuff like that, but if you're buying a work van, you can sometimes kind of tell what the van was used for, or maybe the person you're buying it from knows, because certain professions are harder on their vehicles than others. I think the best would probably be a carpet installer, or they're just using it to haul carpet around. But it's just one thing to consider is like what's it being used for, especially if you're sensitive to chemicals. So they might have spilled chemicals in there that you're gonna have to clean all that out. And I think our van, I think, was for a plumbing company used it. And what was nice actually is that when we bought the van, it had shelving in it, and we were able to take that steel shelving out and resell it. So I think we sold it for like $300. So we got $300 back from the purchase price, which is nice. And yeah, just consider what the vehicle was used for previously. Tip number 7 is look for your van in other states. So this is something we should have did because we probably could have got a van that wasn't as rusty. I kind of did a little, but yeah, I didn't do it enough probably. So look for vehicles in other states. There's plenty of places online you can search. Yeah, so that's another thing. When you are buying a vehicle from a different state, make sure you kind of look at the tax stuff. I know that certain states have different tax laws, and you might have to pay special taxes on buying out-of-state vehicles. I'm not really sure how that works. I don't think our state really did that, but if your state does, it might be something for you to consider. So check at your Department of Motor Vehicles and inquire about any fees or extra fees that you'd have to pay from buying an out-of-state vehicle. So yeah, look around. You might find better deals, better vehicle condition. Yeah, you really open up your options when you shop around and look for vehicles in different states. The last and final tip for buying your vehicle is be patient. So I know it's hard because you want to get converted in that van and get on the road, but if you really want a vehicle that you're going to enjoy and it's something that you want to have for a while, just take your time, find a vehicle that you're looking for. Don't just settle. I mean, obviously there's some things that you probably care about more than others, but if you have the time, you don't need to leave tomorrow, just be patient. Find the vehicle that's right for you. Take your time and make sure it's worth your investment, because especially if you're building it out, you're going to spend a lot of hours fixing something up, and if it's not the right vehicle for you, you're going to probably be frustrated, and especially after you put a few extra $1,000s into converting it into a camper van. Yeah, it took us around 6 months from the time we initially started looking at vehicles to the time that we bought it. We weren't in a huge rush. We just knew that we wanted to convert a van, and we were both working at the time, so We were just kind of looking around and keeping our eyes open, knowing that we wanted to travel full time. And so, yeah, just take your time. So these are our tips for researching what kind of van you'd like to buy, and tips for buying the van after you've kind of narrowed down what you're looking for. So if you think we missed anything, please leave in the comments below. We want to try to help people who are interested in getting into the van life and traveling and converting their own vehicles. So please share your comments down below for anything that you think we missed, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified of our new videos. And remember to like and subscribe and share all our videos, because we need some more subscribers. We're trying to help people follow their dreams and do the things that they want in their lives. And we thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.